Pythagoras, 570 years before the birth of Christ. He is, and this is the school of Athens, the painting in the background. He is one of the first, actually, him and Thales of Miletus are the first two philosophers we're going to talk about. And his study of numbers is perhaps one of the deeper things that we will talk about this year. So Pythagoras, when I say Pythagoras, you're probably thinking the Pythagorean theorem, a squared b squared equals c squared, the triangle. He was a mathematician, and we're really not going to talk about math in the traditional sense. Rather, his philosophy went so much deeper, saying that basically everything in nature is mathematical. It's based on mathematical formulas, just the way that nature tends to show itself. They believed that numbers were almost godlike. They were the key to understanding everything in creation. And just by looking in nature, you can see this. And we're going to get into it a little bit with the golden ratio. But look at the way a snowflake is amazingly, geometrically formed, or the way a snake skin or a beehive. It appears to be done with math, but that's the way nature sort of applies itself. So Pythagoras is famous in some ways also as the father to some degree of music. Understanding in the top picture, kind of an ancient guitar, if you will, by holding different places in the string. You can create different notes, and on the bottom, different size bells. He was also important in terms of astronomy in regards to beginning to believe that maybe the Earth was round. But the part that he introduces, which I think to some degree he might be the forefather of, is the concept of reincarnation. Now, reincarnation, he referred to it, or was referred to as transmigration of the soul. Now, what's the soul? We're going to talk about it over the year, but soul is just a phrase to describe the energy force within you. Some people believe if you die, when you die, your soul floats away, your spirit, your mind's eye. There's different words we can use for it. But the belief that he introduced, transmigration of the soul, upon death, the body dies and the soul floats away, floats on, continues on, and you are then reincarnated as an animal or as another human being. And he believed over many cycles of this, you would eventually be able to escape this. This is similar to the concept of nirvana that we'll talk about. His philosophies, surface level, you say, oh, he worshipped numbers, 2 + 2 = 4. No. He was much deeper, and perhaps the deepest of the philosophers we will cover. So the cult of Pythagoras, his followers were kind of cult-like. Now, Pythagoras had definite rules. He thought if you killed an animal and you ate it, that was cannibalism. I mean, that animal could be, that could be your Uncle Ernie reincarnated. And his school, he had students who would study with him. They would study numbers, not necessarily in the traditional math sense, but they all obviously abstained from eating meat. They were vegetarians. They renounced personal property, gave it up. They basically stopped talking, a vow of silence. But I just find this, these rules were punishable by death if they were broken. I mean, this is hardcore a cult, if you will. But what he maybe stumbled onto is maybe the secret of reality and existence.
Journey through the wonderland of mathematics.
Mathematics? That's for all kids.
Eggheads? Now hold on, Donald. You like music, don't you?
What?
Well, without eggheads, there would be no music. Come on. Let's go to ancient Greece, to the time of Pythagoras, the master egghead of them all.
Pythagoras?
The father of mathematics and music.
Mathematics and music?
Ah, you'll find mathematics in the darndest places. Watch. First, we'll need a string. Stretch it good and tight, plunk it. Now divide in half. Plunk again. You see? It's the same tone, 1 octave higher. Now divide the next section. And the next. Pythagoras discovered the octave had a ratio of 2 to 1. With simple fractions, he got this. And from this harmony in numbers developed the musical scale of today. You can imagine how excited Pythagoras was when he shared his findings with his pals, a fraternity of eggheads known as the Pythagoreans. They used to meet in secret to discuss their mathematical discoveries.
69. Number 1.
The sequence begins with the numbers 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, and continues indefinitely. Each number is obtained by adding the last two digits together. If we were to take a perfect or golden rectangle, break it down into smaller squares based on Fibonacci's sequence, and divide each with an arc, the patterns begin to take shape. We begin to see Fibonacci's spiral. The spiral in and of itself is insignificant. Its importance is revealed in where we find it. Take, for example, the sunflower. The display of its florets are in perfect spirals of 55, 34, and 21, the sequence of Fibonacci. The fruitlets of the pineapple create this same spiral based on the sequence. The pine cone does the same. As currents move through the ocean and the tide rolls onto the shore, the waves that bring in the tide curve into a spiral that can be mathematically diagrammed onto a plot at the points 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, and 55. Buds on trees, sand dollars, starfish, petals on flowers, and especially the nautilus shell are formed with this exact same blueprint. With each segment of growth, the nautilus adds to itself one more value on Fibonacci's scale. This blueprint can be seen around us on a small scale every day, but the greatest example of all is directly above our heads. At an average of 100,000 light years across, even the spiral of the galaxies above us are formed with the exact design that the tiny shell is formed.
Psychologists have also noted that people whose facial, body, and bone structures adhere to the golden ratio are often deemed to be more attractive than their non-proportional counterparts. And if you'd like to pause the video to go measure your face right now, we totally understand. But you might want to hold on a second, because the most shocking example of the golden ratio within human beings is far more interesting. Did you know that the golden ratio even applies to our DNA? It's true, as both our double helix spirals and the composition of a single DNA molecule both seem to have been made in accordance with the divine proportion of the golden ratio. And it's not just humans either, as we've seen the ratio demonstrated in the shells of snails, the number of petals in a flower, and the arrangement of individual seeds within seed heads. Pine cones, tree branches, and root systems also follow the golden ratio, as do some forms of algae and the bodies of certain animals. Some creatures even live according to the golden ratio, with honeybee colonies known to maintain a ratio of males to females at 1 to 1.618. It does look a little suspicious, especially when you also find out that the golden ratio also applies to hurricanes, spiral galaxies, and objects at the quantum level too.
Could mere mathematics create an entire universe? What does broccoli have in common with the Big Bang? And what does it have to do with a video game like No Man's Sky or Minecraft? One thing. All are based on simple formulas that create infinite complexity. In 1980, the mathematician Benoit Mandelbrot publicized a simple formula: Z maps to Z squared plus C. But you don't apply it only once. You take the result and feed it back into the formula. Do this often enough and a pattern emerges, the Mandelbrot set. The more you repeat this calculation, the more complex details are revealed. Ultimately, you could repeat this infinitely, the only limitation being the processing power of your computer. The patterns one can find here look strangely familiar and widespread. Mandelbrot gave them the name fractals. Fractal patterns seem so familiar because these shapes are omnipresent in nature. The most important characteristic of fractals is their so-called self-similarity. Look at a fern leaf. It is made out of smaller and smaller copies of itself. The same is true for Romanesco broccoli. The branching patterns of trees follow this principle, as do the courses of rivers. Lightning spreads into smaller and smaller branches, each sharing the same features as the main bolt. But also man-made structures organize themselves into fractal patterns without us actually planning them this way. Here is a map of all the roads leading to Rome, and a map of the internet. It's especially fascinating that even your own body shows many fractal characteristics. Thanks to its fractal structure, your lungs have a surface area of over 100 square meters, enabling them to efficiently absorb oxygen. This oxygen is then transported through your fractal bloodstream into your brain, in which the neurons are interconnected fractally. Every thought you think, even right now at this very moment, is a cascade of electric impulses traveling through the fractal network in your brain. So, one of the most realistic and complex simulation of our cosmos emerges from nothing but mere mathematics. And no matter where you look around in nature and our man-made reality, you encounter fractal patterns all over. Don't you think it's time to consider the possibility that fractals are a fundamental element of our cosmos?
So the golden ratio, just seeing, I mean, some people might say it's random. I think that's pretty far-fetched. In the top left, you're looking at outer space, and the right, you're looking down at how a hurricane would be formed. And then you've got the snail, all designed in the same geometric sort of fashion. Similarly, you have, I don't know if this is a supernova in outer space, and an eyeball. Now, coincidentally, they look sort of similar. I always found it interesting they call walnuts brain food, the way they are constituted, whereby there's a hard outer shell, the skull, surrounding the inner meat of our brain. On the top right, just looking at how a tree, in the way it takes in light, and a lung, in the way it takes in oxygen, how they're similar. I particularly love the one on the bottom left. Electricity was placed at the bottom of that box, and then that's the way the electricity branched out in a branch-like formation. Just like to the bottom right, how leaves and blood vessels of our heart and the Amazon River, there seems to be a certain way that nature unfolds. And Pythagoras was onto this with the golden ratio. The way a snake skin is made, flower, of course, the nautilus shell. I mean, you could say it's random, but dear God, I mean, that's amazing. Or a snowflake. I don't remember what type of fern that is. the snowflakes. I mean, just somebody with tools couldn't fashion this. But nature, in the way that the water freezes, this is how it's frozen. Maybe random, or maybe something else.
You may not have to look any further for the key to beauty than a mathematical formula, if you can believe it. Don't like math? Well, you might think differently after this next story. Here's Roxanne Stein.
Talented and beautiful. Turns out they have something in common that makes them glamorous to us.
Everything is in a certain proportion.
Cosmetic dermatologist Janet Allenby of Delray Beach explains the basis of beauty is one of the oldest mathematical principles out there.
It's a 1 to 1.618, and it's called phi. The golden ratio and the golden rule are really actually, like the first document is really more like ancient Greek, the Parthenon. These structures have the golden ratio. It's almost a masonry measurement.
Using a golden caliper, Dr. Allenby maps out a patient's face to determine how much and where fillers are needed.
I routinely map out faces because it helps me identify, along with the patient, to understand what is lacking or what will make a more ideal beauty to their face.
No indenture bears my name. Yet the state arrogates my labor. All the same, let a little blood upon the wheel, shed a little more upon the gears, lay your hands upon the leather's hands now, shut the machine down. I recognize no right of state to dictate what of my life is mine and what they'll take. Let a little blood upon the wheel, shed a little more upon the gears, lay your hands upon the lever's hand now, shut the machine down.
So the concept that the golden ratio is actually in play in what we consider beauty. What is your opinion of that? That in fact it's people's facial proportions that actually make them classically beautiful or handsome. That actually corresponds, our eye wants it to correspond to that golden ratio. Next we move on to Nikola Tesla. Now you know Tesla cars, it's named after him. It's not the same guy, quite obviously. Nikola Tesla is sort of the modern day scientist, madman, genius. He did a lot of inventions with electricity. Him and Edison were competitors. And you can see obviously, I don't know if that's actually the Tesla coil or not, but he did a lot with AC electricity. Now, Nikola Tesla had some inventions, and one of those that was reported to be is the earthquake machine. And it's shown in the bottom left. It kind of looks like a jack for a car if you had a flat tire. But this is at the top is a bit of an article, and he literally set up this machine, and it uses vibration. And if you look in the top middle, I'm going to read, it says, I had one of my machines going and I wanted to see if I could get it in tune with the vibration of the building. I put it up notch after notch. There was a peculiar cracking sound. I asked my assistants, where did the sound come from? They did not know. I put the machine up a few more notches. There was a louder cracking sound. And he proceeds to say how he was about to cause an earthquake. And when the police and ambulance arrived, they didn't say what the beginning of the problem happened from his supposed earthquake machine. Now this is obviously maybe far-fetched to some, but once again, Tesla, the guy with the electricity, isn't maybe to be doubted by some. He said, if you wish to understand the universe, think energy, frequency, and vibration. Okay, vibration was what he was just talking about. And then at the bottom, if you only knew the magnificence of the 3, 6, and 9, then you would have a key to the universe. Well, most of us understand those numbers, 3, 6, and 9. Well, maybe we don't truly understand the magnificence because we don't have this key to the universe. So frequencies, 3, 6, 9, what is this about? There's something called the solfeggio scale. But before we get to that, let's talk about what a vibration is. When a sound is heard, it's heard by the inner ear. The inner ear hears the vibration. And the higher the vibration, we call it a higher frequency. As you get older, if you've ever been in my class, sometimes I want kids to be quiet and I'll play the mosquito high-pitched whistle sound. I can't hear it, so it's fine to me. My ears no longer register those high frequencies. Kids hear it and they act as if they're in pain, and then I stop. I probably shouldn't do that. Now, the solfeggio scales, this goes back all the way to the hymn to St. John the Baptist. This is the genesis or the beginning of the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. Now the T was added later, and originally it was ut, not do. But the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, that scale goes back all the way to ancient Gregorian monks who would chant. And the idea is they would chant these specific tones, these frequencies, in the songs they would sing. These frequencies were reportedly found in the Bible in a code in the book of the Numbers, and if you apply them with Pythagorean math, and I'll talk about that in a second, they supposedly emit specific numbers that are frequencies that they say heal you, listening to these frequencies. Is it possible that listening to a frequency, a sound, a tone, will actually heal your body? Well, we know, going back ancient times, music could be used to soothe the soul. I mean, in ancient Greece, they used the flute and the zither, two instruments to basically calm people. If you're having a real tough day, you could put on some calming music. But is there something to the frequencies that actually cause the body to heal itself? This is the actual solfeggio scale, and on the far left are the frequencies that supposedly calm you. Right now, if you've been calm during this little presentation, it's either because of the soothing tones of your teacher, or it's because in the background we've been listening to 528. 528 is a frequency. If you literally on YouTube just type in 5, you will then, the Google Complete will show you 528 options. That is a frequency that's known to be the healing, transformation, miracle frequency, that it restores your DNA. There are pages and pages of 8-hour-long ones because people will play it in the background while they sleep. Does it work? I don't know. I think I know a lot of things about the world, but I really don't know about that. Do I feel calmer when I meditate to 528? Yes, I do. An interesting thing, taking it a step farther, if you look at the frequencies on the left, 174285, if you use Pythagorean math, what you would do is you're going to add the individual digits until you have no digits left. So in other words, 174 is 1 plus 7 is 8, 8 plus 4 is 12, and then you add the 1 plus 2 and you get 3. Then below, 285, 2 plus 8 is 10, 10 plus 5 is 15, add the 1 and the 5 and you get 6. If you continue this all the way through, you will see that all of these frequencies are 3, 6, and 9. That's what the frequencies will end up as. 528, the healing frequency, 5 plus 2 is 7, 7 plus 8 is 15, then the 15, add the 1 and the 5 and you get 6. Maybe that's what Tesla was talking about. Who's to say what power frequencies might have? Maybe the reason why the Gregorian chants or Baroque music of Bach is soothing to us has to do with these frequencies, has to do with numbers. So what do you think? Now, there does exist things on the left. You might know that's an ultrasound. An ultrasound can actually emit a sound into the body that will burst a kidney stone with vibrations. There's an old picture, an old TV commercial of a lady singing a high-pitched note and it breaking glass. Well, frequencies can burst and break things. Could they actually restore health like the solfeggio scales reportedly do? I don't know. But it all comes back to the golden ratio and the work of Pythagoras. Is it possible, more than you ever realized, that our whole world is based on numbers? Write a journal on what you think about this one. People either have blown minds by this, or oftentimes they think it's a whole bunch of hogwash.